Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. On this week's show, we're going to recap Finisher Summer Bash that had a bunch of title fights. We're going to preview the upcoming IBJJF Men's GP happening at World Masters. We're going to talk a little about the Blue Collar FC that has a stacked 8-man bracket. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, to my co-host,
Miranda.
Hey, Miranda.
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good today. Started a new job, and everything's going pretty great. Happy to be here. You're about to go off to Masters in Vegas, Masters Worlds in Vegas. So big old week. Got some fun matches to cover. Got two really fun events to preview as well. Blue Collar FC has a stacked lineup. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show.
It's a $25
bracket.
Yeah, it's a $25 bracket.
Welcome to Jiu-Jitsu.
That's like bingo.
It's a $25,000 bracket. Yeah. Giancarlo Bodoni, Elder Cruz versus the first round, Andy Varela versus Jacob Rodriguez rematch, Roosevelt Souza and Devontae Johnson, and then Andre Porfirio versus Roberto Jimenez. We'll preview that in a bit, but that'll be fun. We also got some super fights on the IBJJF GP, as well as a big bracket. A couple of changes to that bracket since we've talked about it, since it got announced. They're setting it up for Nicholas Mergali versus Victor Hugo in a grudge match. But hey, you got to do what you got to do to get to get everyone interested. So that
I have tickets to that. So saying that our
in
brackets,
Vegas,
saying our brackets don't go long, I'll be there. Somewhere. As
long as your bracket at Worlds finishes on time.
Yeah, as long as mine finishes on time, I'm good.
You text me some news. We got a couple of pieces of news before we get into it.
What did I send you?
You did. I can't find it. I can't find it now.
I sent you some weird. There's some matches that came. Gordon Ryan is going to fight. Who is he fighting?
Oh, Gaudio.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
And I forgot to look it up on the pre-show, but they've been against each other before, either at ADCC 20, I think 19.
On October 1st. It's going to be for the heavyweight championship.
For who's number one?
Of who's number one.
That'll be good. Again, we haven't seen Gaudio. We haven't covered Gaudio on the show.
I think, it's called Night of Champions.
Yeah, so they have a bunch of their champions. What they're doing is they're trying to get a bunch of their champions
but it's who's number one.
Yeah, so it'll be Flow Grappling.
Oh, it is. It does say that up there. Okay.
Yeah. So that'll be an exciting match. Gaudio is a tough dude. He's been against Gordon before. I think it's a match that Gaudio has wanted back. So I spoke to Gaudio very briefly at Kasai in 2019 or 2020 in Dallas, and he was sick. He had to pull out of that tournament because he got sick. But he talked to him very briefly. He had a translator, and we talked very briefly. And it seemed like a match, when I talked to him off record, a match that he had wanted back.
Yeah.
When it's funny because most guys that have faced Gordon that I've interviewed have always gone like, I want that match back. I want to try it again.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's cool that Gaudio will get another match at him. You pulling up when they win against each other?
Yeah, I'm still going back in time.
Oh, no. That's Batista.
No, there's a bunch of them, but I don't see Gordon yet.
Maybe I'm confusing with Hulk because him and Hulk had a really fun match, ADCC 2019, and I know that Hulk beat him there, so I might actually
have
it wrong. They might against each other at Pans.
Quarterfinal at the 2018 IBJJF Nogi World Championships.
Okay, I knew it was one of the three.
In a chippy match, Ryan and Gaudio traded sweeps until the final minute when Gaudio scored a go-ahead advantage. Oh, he won.
No. Gordon subs him, I think. Because the only person that Gordon didn't sub, I think, might have been...
Ryan wrestled up, bringing Gaudio to the mat for a tying advantage, and then almost took his back.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's a little Gordon. It's little Gordon.
Well, that was Gordon in 2018 when he did Pans and Worlds, because everyone was like, oh, you can't win an IBJJF with no heel hooks. And then he was like, absolutely I can. And then he actually did it, and everyone was like...
He was supposed to be at the one... He was supposed to be at the DC one that we all did years back.
And a bunch of guys... And Agazarm registered for that one. Everyone registered for that division.
Muhammad Ali was in that division.
Yep,
and
he was in that division as well.
That was the big thing. Everybody was like, well, he didn't want to go against Muhammad Ali.
And then he goes and wins Nogi Worlds and wins everything else. And everyone's like, well, maybe he doesn't care.
Yeah.
So that will be fun. That got announced. I can't wait to preview that. It'll be fun to look kind of at both guys' games. Again, Gordon's really tough to beat, but Heavy holds the crown. So he's, again, always fun to preview. He always has some new stuff. Do we have anything else?
They're doing a him and Donaher and two other people are doing a Marcelo Garcia benefit right before Worlds on the 30th in Vegas.
Okay.
Who is the guy that runs BJJ Fanatics?
Bernardo Faria?
Yeah, him.
And Michael Zanga?
and there's somebody else in that too. There's 4 of them, and they're doing a 4-person $399 seminar tour, or $399 or $499. I think it's $499.
Probably $499 with those. That's typically around the cost of those seminars is about $500.
And it's at Extreme Couture for Marcelo's cancer therapy.
Sweet.
I'm not in town yet for that, and my fear is that I go to something like that and I learn something new, and I'm like, ooh, I want to try this new thing, and
right
I
before
try
a
it.
major tournament.
I try it in a major tournament and get fucked up because that is what I do.
In other news, that's always kind of the fear. You don't want to do a seminar right before you compete because like the new hotness. Again, I've been in camp with guys that have like learned something the week of, and then gone to like one MMA fights with it.
Oh, I'm
like,
sure.
I knew it was a guy who learned a head scissor the week before his fight, and then he submitted the guy with a head scissor, and I went, of all the things to learn before your fight.
Sometimes you can do that.
This was like 10 years ago, but still. Also, for Team Moldolfo on Aiga, we have a couple new announcements. Mica Galavo has been announced for that team, and give me his name. No pressure here.
Gabriel?
Koua Gabriel.
Yeah.
We've talked about him only a little bit on the show. Good guy.
Is he a brown belt? Is he a black belt?
New black belt, I think, but I think we talked about him when he was a brown belt. So those are 2 fun additions for Aiga in December.
This is the guy. This is the brown belt kid that was at the Brazilian ADCC that we were like
that we were super impressed with.
That were like the belt.
That went against not Souza, but Sassoni. Henrik Sassoni. And he had a really good match in the absolute final with Henrik Sassoni.
Because his real name is Gaudio
de Araujo Gabriela.
Yeah. It's that guy.
So
that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So
let's hope he gets there.
Fun. If you want to see who he is, go back and watch his match with Henrik Sassoni at the ADCC Trials Absolute Final. He's a guy out of Mica Galavo's camp, so he's one of Mica Galavo's training partners. Very good, very exciting guy. Very fun to have him on the team. I wonder what weight class he will be in. I think
he's little.
He's smaller than Sassoni, but that doesn't really say a whole lot. So.
No, but I think he might be 77 maybe. But then 77 is what, Dante and... Is it just Dante at 77?
Oh, for Aiga? Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking ADCC. I was like, there's a lot of guys at 77.
No, for A.
We were just talking about the pre-show about how big Varela is, because we were wondering if him and Rodriguez went against each other at trials, and I was like, no, one was 77, one was 88, but they have a bunch of crossover in opponents because they both kind of float between those 2 weights.
It gets a little confusing when you try to figure out how much people weigh when they're.
And you have Dante going from 55 to 70 to 85 to 55, and then same with Taza. He's a guy that bounces around a lot. So that's kind of the fun thing in jiu-jitsu is because the weight classes are kind of so fluid and so variable through the organizations, you get a lot of mixing. Within 3 weight classes, you'll have a lot of parallel and crossover between grapplers where it's like, oh, he fought him. Oh, but he fought him at 180. Yeah. And then you have a guy where you're one removed from someone that fought at 35, essentially, because you fought a guy at 55 that also fought a guy that was 35 at one point in the career. And so you get these big spans of MMA and jiu-jitsu math of, well, this guy beat this guy at this weight in this time, which I love doing. Everyone else hates, but I love MMA.
It is kind of interesting when you think about it.
Did Demetrius Johnson beat Stefan Struve in that one MMA math problem? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, gotta do what you gotta do.
I don't think I have any other.
I think that was it. I thought I was all excited because I saw Buchecha was going to give and he was going to announce something, and it sounded like he just kept on taking pictures in his gi, and I was like, yes, he's going to come back to the gi and he's going to destroy people. And then he was like, I'm writing a movie about myself. It's coming out.
Good for you, Buchecha.
I was like, good for you, Buchecha, but I wanted
but I want to see you fight in the gi again.
I just thought you would be like, Rug took my will to fight MMA away. I want to go back to the gi now. I want to go back
to the gi.
And I was like, yes, but nope.
That's not the case. So Buchecha has a movie coming out about him, or he's writing a movie,
or he's directing a movie. He's doing something with
film. Good for him. I hope he is successful in whatever endeavor he does. I would love to see him grapple some more. Anything else on the news side before we go into finishers here?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
That was not a confident.
I'll think about it. You know how it happens. In the middle of all this shit, I'm like,
oh, this news is really important.
This news happened. Yeah. I forgot to tell you.
All right, so let's run through. Where do you want to start for the recap for finishers? There were a lot of fun matches. We had a couple of title fights. We had a couple of titles change hands. We had a couple of titles not change hands. All the ones held by Max Hanson.
Yeah. Well, Max Hanson's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, he in the same card. Credit to him, man. This is a rarity that props to the finishers guys and Zach Maslany for letting Max do this.
Well, he's the champion in both weight classes.
But he defended the 155-pound champion and the 170-pound and did it by subs in both matches.
Yes.
Like, that's rare, and that's ballsy. So good for Max Hanson. Let's talk about his matches first, because I think that's a super unique thing in combat sports that doesn't happen a whole lot, and I want to highlight it. I want to talk about it.
His first match was his 155 title contention, and that was against Sid Chavala.
Yeah.
And he's out of standard now. Did you know that?
I knew that because I talked to Sid for a commentary thing kind of unrelated to the podcast a couple of weeks ago, because everyone was out of town. We were trying to help out someone with some commentary, and so I reached out to Sid.
Oh, okay.
Because he does commentary.
Oh, okay.
Like us.
Good to know. Yeah. So Sid has had a match with Max Hanson. It was a little earlier in the card, so it wasn't with the other events. Just
because he was going to do 2 title fights.
Yeah,
you want to give your champion time to do whatever he needs to do between matches. If he has a long, drawn-out match. Both of Max's matches were pretty quick, on the quicker side.
Yeah. I mean, none of them went to for the full 10 minutes.
Yeah, for overtime.
Yeah. So, with Max and Sid, what do you want to go in? My notes are exactly like what
give me your note, because that's kind of
so my note is what happens. It says Max old-fashioned stripper pole knee bar to heel hook.
So there's a better name for that technique.
That's what I call it, and that's how I explain it to everybody. And
that's also what I call it and how I explain it.
And it's just because people understand what I'm talking about.
Because you turn around, you slide down the knee like it's a pole, and then you turn out to the side, and then you can transition it to a heel hook or a toe hold, or you can come under. You can
get a
back
real
off
good
of it.
entry to legs from there.
Yeah.
But it's like the first knee bar you teach people.
It's a step over knee bar, kind of, but the way that he does it, it's honestly pretty similar to the way you kind of teach it. Yeah. He does a good job like tracking the hips and like controlling with how he rolls through. But yeah, the old school thing is stripper pole knee bar.
Yep.
And it's like you slide down the knee, you get your chest in front of it.
Well, and you kind of roll around the knee, you know what I mean? Because it's hard to explain to someone that you have to like take your knee to their hip joint and then kind of go around their leg.
Right.
Because you're not just falling across. You literally have to circle their leg.
And when you teach it to people, a lot of times they want to just kind of like fall down into the knee or like into the hip. And if you teach them to like slide around it and you tell them like, look, stripper pole, they go, oh, I get it.
Yeah, and they all
everyone,
pick it up.
And I hate that. I've tried to teach it. I teach at a university.
Yeah.
Some of the classes I teach at a university for a club there. And I always try to keep it a little more PG with the students, because that demographic just usually appreciates that a little more. And I've been teaching this technique, and then I've had to go like a stripper pole, man. And they go, oh, I get it. And they immediately fixes the technique. And I'm like, I wish I need a better analogy for it. I've also used the word fireman pole.
Yeah, that's what I thought, fireman pole. But that can also go the same direction.
But you go stripper pole, they laugh, and then it ties in their head. And then you have a good bead in their head for exactly what they need to do. And it tends to... The vulgarity, I think, tends to reinforce the technical side a little bit.
Yeah,
I've always found it a little funny thing in coaching.
Not everybody's naked when they dance on the stripper pole.
Yeah, but
it is a legitimate
sometimes
profession.
Fireman. It is, definitely.
And you could be dressed up.
And moving on.
Okay.
So Max retains his title at 55. Looks good, per usual. Again, love that he's defending both of them. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Finishes it out. Finishes heel hook on that. On his 170 match, this was a really neat entry from Max.
And he goes against, for 170, he goes against Zach Galani,
whose
from 50-50.
Name we have butchered. His last name we've butchered repeatedly. It was a point of contention on the pre-show of like...
I think it's
Giuliani, but it doesn't really look like that if you read it, but people say it like that. But I know I've got a message before someone's fixed his name for me.
Who?
I forget, because I don't...
Next time I get a 50-50, I'll just randomly ask.
Yeah, like Zach,
hey,
how do you pronounce it, man? I've done that for years with guys. We talk to them in person, and about 50% of the time, it's like, I'm completely wrong. So
we try.
This was a neat entry. Max, essentially, he kind of half inverts under, and he traps Zach's leg in... It's got a specific name and a position, but I want to more so describe the position, because he traps the leg in kind of an interesting way. He has the low side leg. He scoops it under like he's going to go honey hole.
Well, and he has a honey hole, but then he grabs the other leg.
Then he grabs the other leg over like he's going to go Texas Cloverleaf. But when he does this, a lot of times guys will... This looks like the entry that we see in like 2014, 15, 16.
Okay.
Where you're in and you're kind of not chest to chest. You're facing your opponent slightly cockeyed at like a 30-degree angle. And Zach does kind of the old school defense. He reaches up over. And most guys nowadays won't do that defense in this position. You'll do a running man out or you'll spin out. But Zach is forced to defend that way because Max has done a really good job lifting Zach's hip up off the mat and basically forcing him to turn. And so for a portion of the defense, Zach's own leg is kind of underneath him and he can't actually get up and base on it at all to belly out or to base because Max has both legs.
Both of his legs and he can't do shit.
Yeah.
He's kind of in a stuck position.
He's in a really, really bad spot.
One of my old coaches used to do this to me just to fuck with me.
It's a great teaching tool for like learning.
I mean, you
leg
learn how
locks.
to get out of it, but it's freaking horrible.
And you spend a long time in it. And Max, super calm. I love how calm both guys are. Like Sid has a degree of like fight to him to get out of this, but Max and him.
Zach.
What'd I say?
Sid.
Not Sid. Wrong title fight.
Zach.
This is always what happens. We have multiple matches in the same card with the same guys.
I'll correct you. Don't worry.
I appreciate it. Zach does a really good job of like trying to fight the arms, trying to come through. And in watching this, I was thinking, we've seen Ruotolos defend before, and they have long enough arms. We'll see them try to darce off this position, but Zach doesn't quite have the arm length to do that, so he's not able to wrap over top of the head. So he's stuck tying up on the bicep, on the inside bicep, at the hand, at the forearm, and then Max just has the time to continue to kind of turn his hips out and get further and further away from Zach in order to go over tie heel hook or under or cloverleaf, and he's able to combo through all of these different leg locks before eventually pushing up away and wrapping essentially what is a modified inside heel hook to finish Zach.
Yeah.
The whole sequence is beautiful, and we watched it on the pre-show and a couple of different times. I watched it a couple of different times because to control someone's hip down like that is what we are starting to see a lot of the really, really good guys do again. It's like that meta is kind of shifting where it's like people are starting to collect and collapse the hip.
Yeah, they kind of like, for a while they were doing all the backside like K-guard stuff. And if you notice, that's kind of went away and they've kind of turned back.
People have kind of turned back into, I want to grab both feet and I want to prevent you from running. Because I think with the proliferation of wrestling and kind of the explosion that we've seen from ADCC and a lot more gyms specifically training for that rule set and training to do those things, we're seeing people much more willing to just disengage out of positions that they don't want to be in. Like I'm going to say honor, but a lot of times guys 5 years ago would try to fight through the heel hook positions and like try to counter and do that. Whereas a lot of guys nowadays, we're seeing people being able to tactically get out of leg locks and like just disengage from the position and go back to top guard passing and engaging that way. And I think it's facilitating people to now be able to have to trap both legs because you want to prevent the guy from sitting up. It informs your sweeps. You can now get those. You can get back on top because you're chest to chest. And I think we're seeing a level of control that is needed because people have gotten so good at escaping things.
Yeah.
You have to have both legs. So Max does it really interesting way. I thought the whole sequence was super nice. Again, 2 really quick matches to retain both his titles. I love that Finishers is letting him do both titles on the same card. Like props to him. That is a unique.
He's traveling, but he's not traveling from far. It's just Ohio, but
that's still a jump.
It's still a
4 hours at least.
Yeah, and Max he did that other super fight last week.
What was it?
It was like submission. It was a smaller card. It was in Missouri or.
Missouri. We didn't get a chance to cover that on the show, I think.
Yeah, I don't think we covered it, but he did a super fight in Missouri like literally the week before.
So again, love that he's
moving.
Love that he's on the circuit. He's a guy that I think has really neat entries, and again gets 2 quick finishes, back-to-back title defenses on the same card. A very rare feat in combat sports.
So I think from there we should go into the Corbre brothers, just because that's 2 other matches.
It is 2 back-to-back quick matches. So we want to do Gavin Corbre or Deandre Corbre?
We'll do Gavin.
All right.
Gavin first.
So Gavin's match. So for reference, the entirety of his match is up on Flow. The entire match video from walkout to finish is 1 minute 18 seconds.
Yep.
we've known Gavin was good for a long time. We did commentary for him as he was kind of, I'm going to say, coming up at Corbre, Virginia a couple years ago, and he was winning the absolute, and Gavin's a little bigger than me.
Yeah.
And even back then, he was probably my size.
He took out the UFC guy.
Mm-hmm.
The big UFC Russian guy.
Yep.
I forget what his name is. Oh,
I just had his name.
Trains at Rising Sun.
Mm-hmm. He was with Max. He was yeah, I'm gonna.
Is it Vladimir?
No, it's not Vladimir. It's.
I was just thinking of Russian names, but anyway.
Big UFC heavyweight prospect.
Yeah.
It's killing me. His name. Andrei Romanovsky.
Romanovsky. Yeah. Yeah. He took out Romanovsky
with a heel hook.
And I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, very, very good. And so it's been really cool to watch him like go on and do cool black belt things. Gavin from the jump. Basically, he is against Andrew Franco. Andrew kind of pulls on him and immediately looks for the legs.
Yeah.
Gavin goes up, defends the leg, turns up, and then he does something really neat. As he goes to backstep, he starts passing, which is what you do in that position. But he steps all the way back, and then he dives his arm over Andrew's head like he's going to go head and up. He's going to pass in the side control and then hop to their side to do a head and arm. Andrew recognizes this, flattens his back to the mat, and then Gavin goes, okay, well, I can't head and arm you now because I'm not in the right position for that because you're trying to push me and elevate me over the other side. Gavin balances on top with two, like, on the top of Andrew's butterfly guard hooks.
Float passing,
like characteristic float passing. Floats his leg over to the side so he's in like a top side control, but he's super high up like he's going to go for the cross-side armbar, either the straight armbar on the cross side, or he's going to do the full spin around, the stripper pole armbar on the cross side. But here he does something really interesting. We talked about this on the pre-show. Gavin steps his inside leg, the leg that's on Andrew's chest. He steps it over and through like he's going to do a mounted triangle, which is like pretty normal, pretty standard. He gets an eye. He's pretty flexible to do that. He's a little to the side. And then Andrew like turns towards him, and Gavin, instead of trying to stay on top and roll and correct the roll and stay in mount, Gavin just goes with the roll and ends up with a triangle on the back and then finishes like a modified Kimura. And we were talking...
Is it a Kimura or is it Americana?
I think it is a Kimura.
Okay.
Because he pulls the arm up and down over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a modified Kimura from the triangle from the back.
Yeah.
We were talking on the pre-show, and I kind of want to get you to run through the conversation again. Do you think that this is something that Gavin was looking to set up, or if he went with Andrew's motion here to get this?
I think he went with the motion because, but I don't know.
We've been talking a lot about triangle from the back.
Yeah, Gavin's also a smaller competitor.
Yeah.
Smaller competitors, generally you have to, like, you kind of have to dance on top of people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. You have to balance and float pass.
He kind of has to float pass and get around him. And I think he was sort of going after whatever Franco was going to offer him. And a lot of those arm bars that you were talking about are kind of like, if you fuck up the arm bar, you're screwed. Like, they're not...
You lose position because your hips will get far enough away.
Yeah, they're not solid. They're not... You're going to get put into a bad position if you miss it. Where he just went to a position where even if he would have missed the arm, he still would have had the back triangle.
Yeah.
And he still had something to work with. I think it was just he took what was available and what was, had the best probability of him getting somewhere.
Yeah. It was super
in my
neat.
opinion, because, like, you don't want to go to your back for no reason. Not like Corbre can't play off his back, because I've seen it happen.
And he's very
and
very
he'll
good
hook
there.
the fuck out of you from that position.
Yeah. And we've seen that.
Yeah.
It was just a neat enough transition, and I think it comes off the back of both him and his brother hit a variation of a triangle from the back. Yeah. And it comes off the heels of us talking about seeing a lot more triangles from the back out of Aiga.
Yeah.
And in general, over the past month or two, really,
I like triangles from the back. I'm a fan.
My wife's been murdering with them. It's been great. But we're seeing in the last couple of months on the higher levels on these pro cards, way more people going to the triangle from the back. And we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago when we recapped Aiga, if it's a function of people getting used to ADCC and fighting through the turtle and trying to take the turtle, deal with the wrestle up. I think something in the meta has changed So people are ending up in a position to get the triangle from the back and drill working the triangle from the back a lot more, because we are seeing the triangle from the back, arm bars and chokes and kimuras from the back.
I think there is a lot more turtling currently in nogi.
Yeah.
Because it's a way to not have points put against you. It's a good position to then wrestle up from or get up from.
And to kind of tech out of and get to.
Yeah, and it's kind of a solid position to work with, where I think before you didn't really have people doing that as much. You had them trying to get to guard or trying to get
you have the roll through back to guard a lot. So it's interesting. It's just really interesting that we've seen kind of so many triangle from the back finishes in the last couple months on the show for the matches that we're covering at the higher levels.
I don't know if are they a team like Don Her used to do, where he was like, everybody has to do the same thing all the time. So did
standard works like that as well, where they are all drilling through.
So they might have all purposefully.
But we're seeing it, like we saw Dante do it versus Kenta. We saw Fabricio Andre. Yeah, Fabricio Andre. I think hit one. We're seeing a bunch of different camps doing it, kind of sport wide, and it's just been a really interesting meta shift. And I'm not exactly certain what has changed to put so many people in the triangle from the back, or have so many people drilling the triangle from the back, because there are instructionals that have been out for like a long time. People have used the position for a really long time.
And it's in the smaller ladies divisions, they've used it for forever. Like, it's something that a lot of them do. And I've seen a lot of people do that position. It's interesting for it to go into the men's divisions. Yeah,
we're seeing it mostly at the smaller men's, we're really under 80 kilogram men's division. So it's just interesting that it's made kind of the hop over and become so prolific.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye out on that. Yeah, see if it keeps on happening.
So let's talk about Deandre Corbre's finish, which again is pretty, not quite the same as his brother's, a little bit longer time.
Yeah.
But a similar setup, similar finish.
Yeah, he's against Anthony Molina Valdez, which is another black belt, local black belt that competes at a very high level. Yeah, but I mean, it's the same thing. DeAndre starts, he sweeps him, or he doesn't really sweep him. He kind of goes into his legs. Valdez sits down, and DeAndre gets on top, and he kind of stays on top.
A lot of the standard guys do that too. We see that a lot from DeAndre, from Gavin, and from co-main event. Blanking on his name. Not Frank.
Not Julia.
Josh and I just did commentary on Brian.
Guevara? Yeah.
Guevara will do the same thing. A lot of those standard guys are really comfortable into the leg locks to wrestle up in the same way that we kind of see the B team guys use, where it's like they're very willing. A lot of the nogi only camps really lean into either person goes for the legs, I'm going to get up and wrestle up and pass you off of that.
It's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, and it's how you score points, and we see a lot of people win. I mean, Gordon's used it to win world title matches. Like we just talked about his match with Gaudio. Like that's kind of what he did in that match to win score the points there. So it's nothing new, but we're seeing a lot of nogi only camps. That's where winning. That's how DeAndre sets up getting to the back triangle is off of a wrestle up to from the legs.
Yeah, and he gets on top and gets on the back and does what DeAndre does.
And then finishes.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next match you want to cover?
We go Frank Rosenthal versus Julian Espinoza.
Yeah, we have a change of the title on this one. Yeah. Julian Espinoza takes this in overtime.
I had to look up who he was because I had never seen him before.
We've seen him before. I don't know if we've covered him before.
He's Renzo Gracie. His stuff says Renzo Gracie Costa Rica or Renzo Gracie Austria, which I'm like, that's some two weird countries. To combine.
I mean,
to combine, like if you were going to live in two places, right? And you were like, they're kind of complete opposites.
Not geographically close.
No, but not at all.
Huh.
Not even have the same weather. Like think about it. Austria is like mountainous and
European.
Cold and European, and Costa Rica is not.
Tropical paradisey.
Yeah, maybe they have mountains. I don't know. I've never been. One of these days.
This is a fun
the cartwheel,
regulation match.
The cartwheel back take.
It was nice.
It was nice. I appreciate some craziness.
This was a lot of good work from Frank in the legs and Julian in the legs as well. I was kind of impressed with how well Julian, because we know Frank was at 50. Was it Henzo's for a while.
Yeah.
Moved around. Eventually was at Ryan Hall's 50-50 for a while. Just opened up his own spot.
Yeah.
Precision?
Phantom.
I knew it was a P word. Phantom Jiu-Jitsu. And again, a guy for years that's been a really, really strong leg locker. Kind of one of those OG strong leg lockers. So to see Julian contend with him and be as comfortable as he was in all the leg lock exchanges, I was very, very impressed. And then
and there was a couple times Rosenthal had it. And I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. And then he just,
Julian had great defense. He'd get the knee out. He'd turn the knee down. He'd push out. He'd re-enter. Yeah. And even towards the end of the match, he even puts up some really great passing offense, gets on top of Frank, gets to mount, starts working off the top of mount. And when they went to overtime here, I actually kind of was thinking about, okay, if this is not sub-only, because we're having so many rule sets recently that are sub-only or modified sub-only or decisions or, we're dealing with a lot of different rule sets right now. I was thinking about this one specifically, that was a interesting enough match. How would I score that in different? If I had to go to decision now, in what rule set would I give? And I was like, this would actually kind of be tough to call. I think Julian potentially edged out the regulation. I was really impressed with him. And again, taking on a champion like Frank, that is usually not the case. And I was impressed with him going into overtime. They go into overtime, I think, second round? Overtime?
First round.
First round?
It's first round overtime.
It is first round.
Yeah.
Julian gets...
There isn't a lot of overtime matches on this card, which was interesting.
Because finishers, we talked last week, just changed the rules.
Yeah, because they have stall calls now.
Which I think is good. We had less stuff go to overtime.
I don't know if I agreed with all the stalls that were called.
Yeah.
That's me.
I'm used to ADCC stalling rules, which are you're not moving. You're not doing it's not quintet stalling rules.
Yeah.
But you're not moving towards, progression or activity. They're going to call you for stalling. I think in professional rule sets, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think any new organization implementing stalling like finishers, not new organization, but new rule change for an organization, you're going to have some kind of getting used to it and feeling out period. Not sure I liked all the stalling calls, but again, I'm used to finishers matches being a little on the slower pace, at times.
Well, and this all happened because of the one match where the guy just kind of laid there.
Yep.
And that whole situation.
And you gotta fix rule sets like that.
Yep.
But Julian finishes a rear naked choke in the bottom of the first overtime, and that's the match. Frank looked good in the overtime, but Julian being able... I wish the camera angle was a little better because it was hard to exactly
see exactly what happened.
The commentary can see and was talking about how they thought it was in, it was under, but it was just really hard to tell exactly sort of the hand fight that took place where Frank got his neck taken by Julian.
Yeah.
But again, Julian's not the champion, and always really impressive to see someone take out. Frank's been the champion for
a minute.
For years.
Yeah.
At finishers and been pretty active. So it is really cool to see, a new champion come along. Yeah. Really curious to see, who Julian takes on next, but very happy to see that finishers is, keeping active champions. Frank had a great run. Yes, really cool to see if he's going to get a rematch with Julian or what we're going to see next.
I'm sure we'll see him again.
Yeah.
We see him a lot. Where do you want to go next?
Let's talk about the main event for the heavyweight. We had Nick Wiley versus Pat Shangoli. I just learned his name is not Wiley after...
We said this on the last show.
5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm probably going to still call him Wiley. Nick Wiley versus Pat Shangoli. This one is a little controversial. It was a lot of just regular... It was a lot of a Nick Wiley match and Pat Shangoli match where it's Shangoli on the bottom looking for entries into the legs. Nick is a very good wrestler, keeping distance, looking to pass, looking to move through. And it was sort of that dichotomy. Enough action and pace from each guy. And I was like, this is probably a match that was probably slated to go to overtime. And then in the literal, Renee Souza posted on his Instagram, it's a stopwatch timer.
Yeah.
And the match is a 10-minute match. And Pat, I wish the camera's a little better here.
Yeah.
Get some sort of leg lock at 9 minutes, 59 seconds, and then multiple hundredths of a second, where it's like you're in the last second of the match. He gets some sort of leg lock I couldn't see. And we actually talked to Nick a little bit after this, and Nick was like, yeah, man, I have a job, and I don't want Pat to rip my leg off. So, he got it, and it is. Pat retains the title. I was impressed. I was really impressed with Nick here for as active as he was. A lot of guys will just sort of try to stave off Pat, but Nick was in there looking to pass, looking to kind of put up his own offense. Pat
is also really bendy for a very big man.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he can put his feet behind his head because
there
were some positions where I was like, dude's leg is all like you're gonna have to pass him like you pass a woman.
Yeah, like a smaller
like
woman.
a smaller woman.
Where you immediately go to north-south and smash down all the way.
Well, and you have to like hold limbs down as you pass. Like,
remember
it's
how
not,
like Mason Fowler dealt with
yeah,
Pat? Where it's like the bigger guys will deal with and pass all the way and then flatten.
Yeah, but he's
a really interesting stylistic matchup for guys to deal with. I'm really curious to see who Pat takes on next.
They said it's either the Sultan of Strangles or another 10th Planet guy that was like one of the local 10th Planet guys, because he called both of them out after the match.
Forgetting who.
It's like Juggernaut guy, I think.
I'm forgetting who the Sultan is. What is his name?
You know who I'm talking about.
I know who I know you're talking about, because I judged some of his matches at the ADCC World Open in Vegas. From Immortals.
Yeah.
It's killing me, his name.
I'm looking it up. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Man.
What's his name on Instagram?
I don't know, because it's not Sultan of Strangles. That's what I thought it was.
Immortals Jiu-Jitsu. He's the head instructor for Immortals. He talks the entirety of the match.
Michael Rakashan.
Yeah, Michael Rakashan.
Yeah. It was he called him out and he called somebody else out.
Rakashan would be interesting, because Rakashan is a guy that will just jabber at you the entire match, and it frustrates so many guys.
You mean at another competitor?
Yeah. Kind of like Kevin Crane. Kind of like Kevin Crane does, where he just kind of will talk to you.
I do that to my friends, but
yeah, no, these guys do it when he does it while he's competing.
So it's like a Wagner thing.
It's like Kevin Holland.
Okay.
It's like that, where he just talks.
Wagner talks shit to you while you're like.
And so does Rakashan. Like it was really interesting, because he threw a lot of guys off at the Open, doing that. And I've watched him compete a number of times, because he's East Coast, and so he pops up to stuff that I see. That would be a really interesting match. I think Rakashan is deceptively a heavier dude, but it would be an interesting stylist matchup, because I think that Rakashan's probably not going to be worried about like kind of the attributes that Shangoli brings. So that's honestly a matchup I'd be super interested in.
In this match, Pat probably had at least 30 pounds?
Probably. I think Nick's about 180.
Yeah.
And then Pat's probably about 230, 220. I mean, I'm not really sure. I don't remember.
I don't know how big he is, but there was definitely a size.
Yeah, Pat's bigger. But again, Pat played the bottom most of the time. Yeah. I was happy to see a couple of times in this match Pat look to wrestle up.
Yeah.
We've seen him do it kind of hesitantly.
Yeah.
And with kind of the credentials that Nick has for wrestling, I was happy that we're seeing Pat look to do that a little more, because that was one of the concerns we had in covering Pat's matches, a year ago, was that he really would only play the bottom unless, he really would only play the bottom in matches that we saw him be successful in. So I'm happy that we're seeing him, move in development as is he 16 or 17 now?
I have no idea.
He's still a kid.
He's a child.
But I'm happy that we're seeing him start to branch out his game. I thought the way that he was putting up the half guard was good. He would get the leg inside. He would really prevent that leg from getting smashed down. Like, we're seeing him start to develop that bottom. The rounding out the pieces of his game that he's dangerous in.
I think he's also training. He's training with Unity on a regular basis now.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, we're seeing him in that room.
So he was 16 in 2022. So he's probably 17 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's moving up. He's obviously a guy that we're going to continue to see on the circuit. And he's a guy who we needed to see development from. I'm happy that we're seeing like a bit of the wrestle ups and him, still having that tenacity in the finish that, a lot of guys are not a huge fan of, but at the world stage and the pro stage, like, guys finish hard and fast. So it'll be interesting to see, and Shangoli takes this. I would like to see him against Mike, because I think I'm curious if Mike would be able to get in his head as he does with a lot of the folks that he competes against.
Talk shit to him the whole time. That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, it'd be weird to have it talk shit to a kid, but I mean, Mike would do it. Mike seems, all the matches I've seen, Mike doesn't seem to care. And
what does he talk about?
He just talks to you.
Oh, okay.
He just talks to you.
I just wonder if he's
like
I had some really good lasagna today.
No,
I went to.
You know how Kevin Crane will kind of compliment you while you're doing something, but that was good. Does that, but I get better than that. Like he just talks. I remember watching him, and it almost being frustrating to listen
He does
to.
IBJJF, and I wonder if he does that during that because you'll get
I don't know.
You get your ass DQ.
I mean, he's never disrespectful in the way he's done. I mean,
no, but
I
if you
recall
talk,
watching his matches.
if you talk during an IBJJF match, you will get DQ'd.
Yeah, they're weird about it.
And he does IBJJF because I ran into him at New York Open.
He does IBJJF. I mean, he's good.
I'll have to watch
but
his matches.
He always frustrates folks. And it's been very interesting to watch him compete against folks, and that's always, again, referee or judging his matches at the World Open. It was just very interesting to watch how he was able to just get under most of the folks' skin that he competed against. And as a judge, you're being objective in there. It's like as long as he's not, there's not misconduct, it doesn't factor into the judging. But it was very interesting from a tactical perspective. I'm curious to see if he would use that, because he's used it, through the matches that I've seen him do. So interesting. That would be a fun match to see. What other matches do we got on the card you want to talk about?
We had Brian Guevara versus Steve Jochum.
Yeah.
Which Guevara is a standard jiu-jitsu gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
He was a quote unquote purple belt.
Yeah, and big quotes.
He's a purple belt.
Dude, that's a hard dude. That's the dude that we're gonna see go and do cool things.
Yeah.
I talked to him. I've interviewed him a couple times. He wins Copa Maryland and Copa Elite.
Yeah.
In Copa Virginia. Frequently. He actually just won the last Copa Virginia this last weekend, like a $500 cash prize down in Virginia.
Yeah, he wins a lot of stuff.
Josh and I did some commentary on his finals match that should be out pretty soon.
It's funny because at Noogie Worlds, I saw him and I recognized him, but I couldn't figure out who he was.
Yeah.
And there's a whole group of people that I'll recognize them, but I can't figure out who they are. And it's IBJJF, so everybody looks the same. And I just noticed his little man bun. And I was like, I know that guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it was this whole thing. And it was funny watching from then to now. He's done so much more.
Oh yeah.
In the last year.
He's very rapidly kind of developing his game.
Yeah.
And the tactics behind his game. And you're watching him fix those little holes, figure out how his game kind of locks in, and he's getting those bigger looks. I saw him at ADCC Dallas.
Yeah.
Because I judged, I was a judge there for that event, and we were on the same flight back to Baltimore. And so I was stuck in the airport with him for 2 hours, and we had, a nice conversation for a portion of that time about his training, about what he's doing, and you just got more insight into the standard camp and got more insight into sort of the progression of his training, because again, as a guy watching him and covering him, it's nice to get a chance to, be stuck on an airport with someone that you're interested in where their career is going.
Yeah.
So he took on Steve
Jochum.
Jochum? Is it Jochum?
It's Jochum.
Okay. Steve Jochum. And
he wins by ride. Brian wins by ride out.
Yeah.
And then we had a gentleman named Kyle Myers, a local Saga black belt, versus Shane Curtis, which was an interesting match. And it was a match at heavyweight, which I didn't realize Shane Curtis was even close to being heavyweight.
Is he? He looked like
They said on one of his posts he said what he weighs, and he weighs close. It's not that bad.
So this match implemented the stalling calls, which I think they were good. I think a lot of people will think that they were a little quick.
Yeah. I think they were.
And you thought specifically they were quick.
I think on a couple of the matches. I think on the main event, when they started trying to call stalling for them, they were both doing something. As long as you're both trying to progress forward, I think there isn't a stalling call.
Yeah.
I think a stalling call is when you have somebody who's holding, guard on somebody and they're not trying to do anything.
To sweep
they're just
or progress,
holding you. Or you're in maybe a butterfly position and they're trying to body lock pass, but they can't. They're not doing anything.
They're just holding the position. Yeah.
That to me is stalling.
So I have the ADCC interpretation of stalling.
As a ref, I'm not calling stalling unless you're doing something like that, or you're doing that stupid where somebody's in seated guard and somebody's standing and they're just staring at each other.
You're pushing the head, or you're just
Then that kind of stuff.
I am more happy in all the ADCC stuff I've done recently with how this stalling is. This is much more akin to what I'm used to in the way the ADCC calls stalling, where it's if you are not moving enough, or you're actively making you're making real attempts to actually get past the person and actually progress and do the work, they can call you for stalling. Or activity. A lot of times it's just action calls in ADCC, which I think Finishers kind of uses the same. They use their stalling as action calls, but they have a little more weight. So again, new rule set. This was as a guillotine guy myself, as an aficionado of the guillotine.
He originally had a post that discussed the whole weight disparity, and it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
But it's now gone. So
Shane looks pretty similar in size. We talked about Shane last week. He's been on Polaris, Athletes of Satan patch that we're a big fan of.
Yeah.
This was it was a fun back and forth. I want to talk about the finishing sequence. Kyle Myers hits a really interesting guillotine as a guillotine aficionado. I love how he sets this up because he set this up in a way that is pretty uncommon and something you're really only going to see from a guillotine specialist.
Yeah.
He sets this guillotine up when Shane Curtis is sitting in the guard towards him in kind of like a half-bladed butterfly guard.
Yeah.
And usually when someone's in this position, unless they actually lean their head into you to like go double under or over under to start to sweep you, you're not going to go for this. But Kyle, when Shane's back is still a little pushed away.
Especially when you're on your knees. Like standing, you can kind of like hover over somebody and then roll it, but like he's on his knees.
He's on his knees and Shane's back. And so when you finish the guillotine from someone in their own butterfly guard, you usually have to have their head tilted in so you can get your shoulders over top of them so that you can have enough pressure on the back of the crown of the head to get your hands in, to chin strap, to hand over hand to finish the guillotine. Well, Kyle does not care. He throws essentially a jumping chin strap over Shane. And Shane goes to the side, and then Kyle basically is on his butt and makes not on his butt, he's on his knees, and he makes a big motion forward because what he's trying to do is he's trying to catch Shane's leg when Shane's on his knees to sit through and sit under him for this like essentially like an arm and guillotine standard sit in, or these regular guillotine.
Like a baseball slide.
Like a baseball slide.
Yeah.
And Kyle has the overhook on the arm like he's going to underhook like he's going to cow catcher.
Yeah.
He then, while he's
sitting... But a
sitting...
shallow underhook. Not
super shallow.
Yeah, not like you're going to flip him to the side.
While Kyle is sitting under Shane here, he takes the hand out, he locks in just under the chin, his own chin strap, and he's able to get his shoulders over top of Shane's back enough as he's sitting in to break Shane's posture down, to turn him over to throw to the side. He does a really nice job of trying to like step all the way over to mount to finish this, but Shane is able to fence him off of the feet. So Kyle drops into half guard and is still able to come up with like a power guillotine finish with that low hand position. Super neat guillotine. Not a guillotine that you are going to see unless someone is a specialist in this position in this type of choke.
Yeah, and mounted guillotines are not fun.
It's not even mounted. It was like to the side and half guard.
Yeah.
Super neat finish. Yeah. It's a finish that, you only see from specialists because there's so little control in the head. It's reliant on you just being super comfortable with that squeeze in a way that unless you are just a straight guillotine player, his Instagram is literally what? Guillotine season?
Yeah, guillotine season.
He's about
and he has this exact same guillotine doing it to a bunch of people.
Very, very good at this. Again, guillotine specialist. I love him. I am one.
But it was kind of fun. It was kind of funny because it was like they were kind of going back and forth. It was a little slow, and then he was like, "No, I will take."
They got that second stalling call, and Kyle was like, "Time to go.
Time to take your head off."
Jumps over like from such an unorthodox position, and that's again getting the jump on a guy like that is usually what will lead to these sort of finishes and being super confident in that squeeze. Yeah. So really cool sub, really cool finish on this card. What else do we have?
I think
that's really the bulk of what we wanted to cover.
Yeah,
I think
we had a German gentleman named Linus von Streck. I just like saying that name. He went against Andrew Cockle.
Yeah, staple in the team. We've covered Andrew for years. Done a bunch of commentary on his matches. Local black belt that's on Fury.
He did.
He's been on everything.
He did 2 matches that day. And there was a German gentleman that allegedly was visiting. A bunch of guys were training with Jason Rao.
He came over with Shane.
With Shane,
yeah, from Europe.
Yeah. So he went against Cockle. Cockle armbarred him in overtime, and it was like almost like a Barada Plata. Like
it was like a modified, it wasn't like a straight armbar. It was like a modified kind of shoulder position.
But it was a fun one.
Yeah, Cockle's always a fun guy to watch. He usually has really, really nice dynamic subs.
Yeah, he does. He does some crazy like jumping guillotines like in the air.
He'll really go for it, and that's why I've really enjoyed watching his game for years, because he's a guy that will, like, when the chips are down, he will
amp it up.
He will amp it up and he will go for the finish in a way that is always very entertaining as a commentator and as a spectator.
Oh, yeah. As a spectator, he's a very fun game to watch.
He'll in one of those like live by the sword, die by the sword. He will lose matches, but he always comes to bring it, and he's always a guy I'm happy to see on cards because he takes his training seriously, takes his competition seriously, and like he's out there putting it on the line in a way that you don't necessarily see everyone do that. So.
And we move to the Absolute GP and Super Fights on 9/1 at World Masters this weekend.
So you got tickets to this.
I do have tickets.
Hopefully we're going to see this. Do you want to talk about the bracket or do you want to talk about the Super Fights?
Let's just start at the top and move down. That way we're not jumping.
We got side A of the GP. It's a 8-man GP. We have Victor Hugo versus Rolando Montero.
Victor Hugo.
I think Victor Hugo takes this. Victor Hugo is phenomenal. He's got a great top game. He's got a great bottom game. One of the best heavyweight guard sized guys, guard players in the sport. Go back and watch his finals matches at Worlds, at Absolute.
Yeah.
Go back, pick and choose your Victor Hugo match. Great knee bar game that I love to see. I think he beats Rolando Montero. I think he has beaten Rolando Montero before. We also have Stefan Bana, who was a late replacement. I forget who he replaced.
Oh, crap. I knew who he replaced.
And it's going to kill me.
Give me a second. Keep on talking.
Stall.
I'll look it up.
So Stefan Bana is going against Felipe Andrew.
Yeah.
And I think, again, coming in as a late replacement in Vegas with the altitude is always going to be tough. Bana was probably in Vegas already. But Felipe Andrew in these absolutes, I think he's got a really, really great sub game. And I pick against Felipe Andrew occasionally. I'm usually wrong in those picks.
I'm not going to pick against Felipe.
So I think on side A, we're probably going to have Victor Hugo versus Felipe Andrew. That will be a fun match, but I do think that Victor Hugo moves on from that. I think he's been bracketed to do so because on the other side of the bracket, we have Nicholas Margali versus Francisco Lowe. And
for whatever reason, I thought Margali was in a super fight, but I guess...
No, they are setting him up to be versus Victor Hugo.
Yeah, but he said he's never doing a gi IBJJF match again. Remember that?
He says Margali says a lot of things.
He says a lot of things.
But hey, make your money, Margali. Give me hype.
And it's probably why it's $100 a ticket to get to this thing, so they can pay Margali.
It'll be fun. Francisco Lowe. I like Francisco Lowe. He has struggled a little bit against the super big absolute guys.
He has.
And Margali is a super big absolute guy.
He has some size to him, but he definitely, like the smaller dudes, he can...
Is Francisco Lowe 190? I don't think he's 190.
I don't think he's 190.
No.
I think he's
like
small.
80.
Yeah.
He's like 180-ish. He's about the size of Taza, who will walk up to about 190. And Francisco Lowe is a similar size. He went against Tackett, didn't he, recently?
Yeah.
And he was cut to get to that weight. And I think that was a significant cut for him. So I'm guessing for the GP, he can't be bigger than 185.
Yeah.
Would be my guess here. So.
Well, and he probably wouldn't, if he was bigger than that, he probably wouldn't want to be bigger than that.
Yeah, because of the frame that he has. Again, I think Margali takes this. He's been bracketed in a way that they're looking to have Margali versus Hugo here. I think Margali can tie up Francisco Lowe. I think he can get him to the back, and I think he can choke him.
Yeah.
Is probably how he will do that. Francisco Lowe is a ball of energy and tough to kind of hold on to, but he can be slowed down by bigger guys.
Yeah, and he does have size.
And you can't get on top of him.
Gabriel Rocha.
Oh, Gabriel Rocha is replaced by Stefan Bana.
Yeah.
So Gutenberg Pereira will take on Paulo Merlin.
Yeah.
I think Pereira takes that, and we get a Margali versus Pereira match. That's a rematch.
From Worlds, right? No, Pans.
No.
It was Pans.
BJ Stars.
Well, it's also Pans because I freaking watched it. I think I remember sitting at Pans.
Didn't Pereira beat Margali at BJJ Stars, and I had to go against Penna?
But that was a while ago. This was recent. This was this last Pans. Like, I remember sitting and watching it. I'm almost positive I sat and watched it.
I think
he like almost took his back, but not really.
I think this match will be very close.
Yeah.
Pereira is a guy that I've been a big fan of.
Completely wrong with this, but I thought I was wrong.
I do think Margali is going to win again because of the bracketing. They're setting this up to be finals. Hugo versus Margali. I think this is close, but I do think Margali edges this because I think big events Margali shows up.
He does.
And
he shines.
We've also seen his whole camp put on the gi. We've seen Gordon in the gi, Corbre in the gi.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of gi folks suddenly at New Wave with Margali in a way that we have never before. We've seen guys put on the gi, talk about it, but we're seeing like multiple pictures of Gordon in the gi.
Yeah.
And Gordon has
who knows about that, but who knows if that's just a...
I think that Margali takes Margali versus Pereira, and we get Hugo versus Margali. Who do you think takes that? That's the question.
I mean, I'm not going to bet against Margali.
That is unfortunately kind of my take, too.
That's unfortunately how the situation is currently. So, okay. So he did win. You were correct. I was not. I'm thinking about something completely different. He did win against Margali at BJJ. Yeah, at BJJ Stars 5.
Yeah. It was a huge upset.
In 2021 by an advantage.
Yeah, and that was, I think, the best. And that was a huge upset at the time. And that is the best Pereira has ever looked. He can do that again. He has the ability to do that again.
I mean, that would be the real big upset. Because if it was wound up being him versus Victor Hugo, that completely changes.
Oh, yeah. I still think... I go Margali here.
Yeah.
I think that he beat Hugo already, and then he got DQ'd for the middle finger that he gave. But I think also Margali with a giant chip on his shoulder.
That is the finger.
That's why this match is such a hype match. I think Margali with such a big chip on his shoulder, and the whole camp going to gi, that camp never does gi. For them doing that, I think there's a big push. Again, Hugo is a monster. He's got Lovato in his corner, got Sanji, all of those guys. I mean, Sanji posted a picture of that room, and Sanji at 6 foot.
Oh, yeah. I saw that one.
Is the smallest guy. He's got Felipe Costa in that room.
Yeah, they were
with
all
him.
like 6'5", 6'7", and then he
was a guy 6'11".
Yeah, he looked tiny, and I was like, what the
Sanji
hell?
looked our size.
Could you imagine me? I would look like a miniature human. I would look like a midget. In that room.
Was wide. And I know it looked a little forced perspective as well, but Sanji's right in the center and by like a head smaller than some of the guys in that room, and Sanji is 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So both camps are really putting it all in. Neither would surprise me, but I think they're pushing.
They're pushing.
Margali's beat him. Margali's beat him before. I think he can beat him again. I think Hugo, with less focus on no-gi, more focus on the gi, does have that advantage. Watching Hugo beat Margali here close wouldn't surprise me.
It would be some shit. Like it's gonna be a crazy experience if that happens.
Margali wants that back in a weird kind of like athlete world champion kind of way that like drives people to odd places to be outstanding.
Yeah.
Next one we have, so that's the GP. Should be great. I can't wait for you to come back and tell us all about it. Next round we have super fights. We have really, really good super fights too. We have Joanna Libre versus Emily Fernandez. Joanna Libre was in the finals. Her most recent biggest profile loss was finals at Fionn Davies. This is who Fionn Davies beat for her world title this last year. She goes against Emily Fernandez, who recently had a match against Helena Crovar at the Fight Pass Invitational. Yeah. This is in the gi. It's different. I go with your world silver medalist here.
Yeah.
Libre is phenomenal. Emily Fernandez has looked good recently, but Joanna Libre is your national champion for IBJJF for U.S. Nationals, medalist at Pans, silver place at Worlds. Very, very hard to beat.
I'm assuming all of this is in the gi too.
Yeah, the IBJJF GPs are always, unless they're no-gi GPs, they are in the gi. Jonathan Alves versus, any other words on that?
Nope. We move on.
Jonathan Alves versus Jackson the Guy. This will be fun. I think Jonathan Alves will be able to slow down Jackson the Guy, unfortunately.
Alves has looked relatively better lately.
Yeah. He's not as glacial in his pacing as we have had.
Glacial.
Well, a lot of matches.
That's the truth.
Jonathan Alves will put up some work.
Yeah.
He will get to a spot he wants to be in.
And
he will
chill.
ride out for 6 or 8 minutes. And then in the last minute, 2 minutes, or 45 seconds, he will show phenomenal jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And that was kind of our problem in watching his game. It's like we know he's so good, but he only shows us these little bursts enough to win the match, which is what he needs to do. We're seeing him, kind of like Jontas Gracie, put up a little more of a pace as of recently. Jackson the Guy's a guy that'll run a pace. Yeah. But I do think that Jonathan Alves will tend to slow guys down with the lapels and the gi, pull him in.
Definitely slows everything down.
I think Alves is a bit stronger he's a bit bigger and a bit stronger, like just physically
stronger
than the guy, and that will play against the guy's ability to move around. Again, the guy, world medalist, phenomenal player. Did he win Worlds last year?
I think he got close.
Yeah.
I think he did. For whatever reason, I think he did, but
yeah,
I would have to.
I think Alves is a weight class up. I think Alves takes this, but I think Nagai makes him work for it.
But at least in the gi, like a weight class up isn't as bad as no gi. Like no gi, a weight class up is a big issue. In gi, kind of, it's a little bit different.
Really?
I think so. I think it's easier to go
See,
up a weight class.
I go back and forth on that sometimes where I'm
think
like,
in
is it
gi-
easier, is it harder, is it easier, is it harder?
I don't know. And you're talking to a person like I do middleweight now, which I always thought middleweight was too big. And like I do middleweight now.
Now you're like, ain't gonna cut.
And I'm still fine.
Masters 3 ain't gonna cut anymore.
Yeah, I'm like, screw that shit. But and I don't really see a difference and that's 152. I don't see a difference between that and 125. They're slower at 152, but I don't think they're stronger. It's really weird.
That's really weird.
So I don't know. Like maybe it's I feel like in gi you can slow people down even if they're big. Like as a tiny person that normally goes against 200.
That's a good way to put it.
Like I normally slow people down because I'm little, and like it's easier to control a big person because I have the gi to work with, as opposed to no gi where like it's athleticism, and if they're bigger than you, then that puts.
That's so funny because I have the exact opposite take for
Really?
the exact opposite
Really?
reason. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly your argument, but reversed is the argument I have. So,
okay,
but whatever.
That's
so,
interesting.
It'll be fun. Should be a good match. Cole Abate, we looked that up. Cole Abate is taking on Eduardo Granzotto.
He's the pans. Wrong year.
Wrong year for Nagai.
Stupid. Yeah, I was looking. Yeah, he's the world's.
He's the world champion.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It all after 6 years and 300 episodes, it all blends together a little bit.
76 kilograms.
Okay. And Alves is a weight class up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So 2 world champions
But
facing off.
He did lose to Alves at Worlds in
The year prior.
No, it's kind of confusing. No, okay, so this is a rematch of finals at Worlds. Jonathan Alves won finals. He won on advantage at finals. And
yes.
I'm reading it in the wrong direction.
I remember this.
So this is a rematch from Worlds 2020.
I apologize for everyone screaming at
76 kilograms.
their stereos at us. My bad on this one.
Do you think people... How many people?
People, people, it happens.
You think?
Yeah,
you think people scream through computers?
They've told me.
Oh,
and
okay.
I apologize. That's why, because it happens.
I try.
Moving on to
anyway,
my failures.
Let's move on.
Cole Abate makes his black belt debut against Eduardo Granzotto, who's also debuting black belt. I love that Flo put that in there. Like, Jonathan Alves, Jackson the guy, rematch of finals, not in there. But 2 black belt debuts, that's in there. Give us something.
Yeah.
I am not, after Aiga and after Worlds and Trials and everything else.
Watching Cole Abate,
get better rapidly at 19.
What is the Gator roll? He Gator rolls people so nice.
Tynan or him?
No, both of them.
Both of them do now.
Both of them do now. He was.
I'm going Abate.
At the Asian championship.
When he got his brown belt,
freaking murdering dudes.
Yeah.
So
I'm going Abate. I'm not as familiar with Granzotto. We've talked about him very briefly on the World Show last year, but again, Abate's. I'm not betting against Abate.
Yeah.
Tynan Dapper will return to face Jan Paiva.
Oh, so they're both debuting.
No. Well, good. Eduardo Granzotto is as well. They're both debuting black belts.
Oh, okay. No, it's a weird way for them to write that in there. Whoever wrote it really bizarrely.
It is written weird. But hey, at least Flo have an article about this finally, which is few and far between these days, unfortunately. Unless you are Jansen Gomez, and you're taking on Tynan Dapper, I'm not betting against Tynan Dapper.
No, me either.
No disrespect to Jan Paiva.
And I don't know if Gomez could do it again. I think I think you do it once, and then I think
he can do it again. But I think that Dapper will be so angry going into that match that he won't.
Dude, and I think he learns what he did wrong.
Yeah,
he
and the AOJ camp is very good about that.
Not
making the same mistake twice.
Yeah,
it's not like it was like a very small thing that he did that I just don't think he will never let himself be capitalized on that way again.
And he just comes off as the type of person that isn't going to let that happen.
No.
So my assumption is
Tynan Dapper will do what Tynan Dapper does in this match. Paiva.
How do you say that name?
Jan Paiva.
No, the nickname.
Piku Paku?
Okay.
That's not how you say it. It's Pika Payu.
Pika Payu?
Yeah, I don't know. I just
Okay.
made it up. So that's the IBJJF GP. Honestly, Stack GP, I love that they're paying out folks.
Yeah, because they're taking our money to attend it. This is the first year they actually charged to attend it.
Yeah, it's usually they've run it weird at Worlds. Remember they had the 4-hour break or 6-hour break one year between the semis and the finals
I remember
one year.
And then
That was Emil and I
was
came
that-
to watch it. And we had to leave because it was just there's a 6-hour or 4-hour
really?
break or 2
well,
hours.
this allegedly is at a different venue than World Master,
Okay.
but they're all together because they're all in that convention center that's
Yeah.
right beside the Westgate, which I hate the Westgate. Screw the Westgate.
It's
Don't stay
a
there.
place.
Their air conditioning doesn't work very well.
Dude,
It was
we
so
were
hot.
So
it was
hot.
so
We
uncomfortable
were
at that place.
miserable
Yeah.
at trials.
Yeah,
It was so hot.
It
that
was not
day.
fun.
So let's move on to Blue Collar FC. It's on Fight TV. I don't know if it's pay-per-view. I haven't checked yet. I just realized now. We got first round, Giancarlo Bodoni versus Elder Cruz. It's an 8-man bracket. This is a rematch. Giancarlo beat Elder Cruz via advantage at East Coast Trials in 2021.
Yes.
And then Elder Cruz beat Giancarlo Bodoni at the inaugural Twisted Church
Yeah.
last year or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know that because we looked it up, and what popped up was the Grappling Rewind episode 236 from 70 episodes ago almost. And YouTube is kind enough to actually part out what matches we talk about. I had no idea that it did this, by the way.
Yeah. We learned this.
I was
We
super
learned
like,
this
look at
today.
that. And the description that I wrote actually explains exactly what happened in the match. There was a controversial scoring sequence that earned Giancarlo a -1 in the ADCC scoring. And I love that our YouTube description is what pops up when I search that match.
Either I just bought it or you don't have to pay for it.
You have Fight Plus?
Yeah, I mean I have Fight Plus. Maybe it says I purchased it. So
Miranda purchased Blue Collar FC. So this is gonna be a rematch.
I'm not even going to be able to watch it because I'm not even going to be there.
Hey, I'm gonna watch it though. So Blue Collar FC.
Use through my account if it's wound up being pay-per-view. Anyway,
Giancarlo versus Elder Cruz. Again, I'm going to go Elder here. I think that Giancarlo will not make the same mistake twice. I think he is also substantially bigger.
you said who?
Giancarlo.
No, you just said Elder.
I think Giancarlo is going to take this versus
Okay.
Elder
Okay.
because I think Giancarlo is not going to make the same mistake twice in the scoring. For Blue Collar FC, it's 10 minutes sub only. Then it is if it's no sub, then it is 2 overtime rounds of 2.5 minutes each of golden score.
Yeah.
And then it's judge's decision, which I think is a pretty good, aside from ADCC, one of the best rule sets.
I like Gold Score.
A golden score, again, I don't like unlimited golden score, like sub-stars. I like a little bit of golden score. Don't go into a weird overtime, just first to score.
I almost like the last to score too.
Last to score is a great rule, but it's 10 minutes sub
anyway,
only.
yeah.
So you can't have last to score.
Yeah.
So I like that at least if there's no sub, there is a criteria. I think late, potentially the wrestling of Elder is a problem.
Yeah.
We've seen Pedro Mourinho put Bodoni on the back foot, and I think Elder is a kind of similar stylistic
been doing
matchup.
all those ADCC opens, and he's been doing well. So
And that's kind of your 88 champion at ADCC. I think in the rematch, Bodoni has looked stronger and stronger in that New Wave camp. I do not think he will be beaten in the same way as Elder Cruz beat him at the inaugural Twisted Church. I'm going to go Bodoni here, but this is a fun rematch.
Yeah.
This is honestly some good bracketing because, you have a guy that we know can contend with the champion in Bodoni.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. Other side of the bracket, we have Roosevelt Sousa versus Devontae Johnson. This is a tough one to call for me.
Yeah.
Devontae, if the Devontae that shows up for trials shows up, he can beat Roosevelt Sousa.
Yeah.
But Roosevelt Sousa has been competing a lot. But again, so is Devontae.
Yeah.
I kind of in my gut here want to go Roosevelt Sousa.
Me too.
I think that he will be a bit bigger than Devontae. And I think we'll see him play really, really heavy on the head, and he'll make Devontae can get a little cagey and get a little not gun shy is the right word, but you can slow down. We've seen people slow down his activity in matches, and I think Roosevelt Sousa can play a game to do that. And that's sort of the only reason I think late Roosevelt Sousa can score and sort of overpower Devontae.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I think this will go to golden score, and I think that's where we will see Roosevelt Sousa potentially win this. But Devontae is super explosive and quick for the weight class. He's going to be a little bit on the smaller side versus Souza.
Yeah.
So he does have the speed to get to like a double. But I think this does go to golden score.
Yeah, they've never won against each other.
Yeah. I think it's different weight classes usually.
Yeah, I didn't. I was just checking.
Yeah, golden score. We have, in the other side of the bracket, we have Andy Varela versus Jacob Rodriguez.
That's a crazy one.
I'm excited for this one.
We've seen Andy Varela versus the other Rod, Nicky Rod.
Nicky Rod. That was ADCC in the absolute, and Nicky Rod scored like 17 points on Varela before submitting him. But Varela is a guy that if you're much, much bigger, you can kind of deal with him. Jacob Rodriguez and Varela are now the same size because Varela's put on some size.
And they're both kind of all over the place. Like, they both do all kinds of crazy shit. So at least we'll get a lot of action.
They're athletes. They're athletes that are willing to leverage. I love this match because I'm really curious what Jacob Rodriguez we see. Because Andy Varela is a guy that comes out hard and early, and they talk about on the Thimpman podcast, Jacob Rodriguez is a guy that will lose the beginning of every match and then in the end will beat you. With Varela, he can dig himself into a hole that's really hard to get out of. But I think Jacob Rodriguez's ability to come on late in a match is some of the best in the sport.
Yeah.
He is one of the, I mean, he got on Bodoni's back. He finished Colvin with a buggy choke in the end of trials. Like, Jacob Rodriguez's ability to come from behind.
You're going to have to weather the storm. That's going to be a rough fucking storm.
Yeah, because Andy Varela will bring it, especially being bigger for the weight class now. Super excited for this. I do think that Rodriguez takes this late.
I'm going to go Varela on that one.
Really?
I go because Rodriguez is coming off a collarbone injury too.
Oh, you're right.
So
I've just been watching a lot of his B team footage. And I've been really happy with his footage.
He's had a couple matches since then, but he hasn't had anything like at this magnitude.
Yeah. Varela's been in the opens, and Varela's looked phenomenal in the opens.
Varela has that whole like 10th Planet Las Vegas chaos team behind him.
Go back and watch Andy Varela's match versus David Arce, who's a guy at a new wave, who I think is also going to be a dude coming up that we haven't had a chance to talk about much. That match was really impressive, and Arce just spears Varela, and Varela, you see him get taken down and go, oh, this is real, and get back up, and it was a banger of a match. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast, but definitely want to go back and rewatch if you're kind of curious where Varela looks like right now. I'm going to Rodriguez. You're going Varela, but should be a fun banger match regardless. Next one, we got anything else on that?
Nope.
We got Andre Porfirio versus Roberto Jimenez.
I think if we get crazy Roberto,
Feral Jimenez, as you put it,
Jimenez, then
we get Trials Jimenez. That dude is unstoppable. If he gets double unders, he is unstoppable.
He's fun to watch.
Andre Porfirio tends to post in your guard in a way that I think will allow Roberto to get to his back.
Okay.
That is my only thing. There's a thing that Andre Porfirio does where he makes space and he'll push against you.
Yeah.
And I think it is the opening that Jimenez needs to be the best in the world. That thing he does, which is the double underhook back take.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'll be able to finish Porfirio. I think that Porfirio would be bigger than Jimenez, but Jimenez has also put on some size as well.
Yeah, and Jimenez doesn't really have a problem normally going against a bigger opponent.
No.
That normally
doesn't. He
doesn't.
against Nicky Rod and beat Nicky Rod at Third Coast Grappling. Like, Jimenez does not care.
He does not give a shit. But he's fun to watch. I like watching him.
Yeah. So then we
I would have liked the card to be put the opposite direction so that the winner of that match would go against Varela and Rodriguez. Because I think either Varela or Rodriguez versus Jimenez would be fire.
Oh, absolutely. So we're most likely we're going to get Jimenez versus the winner of Andre Porfirio or Roberto Jimenez versus the winner of Roosevelt Souza and Devontae Johnson. Bodoni and Cruz versus the winner of Varela and Rodriguez. I think Bodoni takes the whole thing.
Yeah,
is kind of how I think it goes.
It's Bordoni's to lose. He has to bring it. And that will, but if he somehow gets taken out first round, then
kind of the floodgates are open.
Who the hell knows what's
I think all of the guys, which I love about this bracket is every single one of these guys can take this.
Yeah.
And we say that a lot, but I think this is, you can point to stylistic strengths. Like Souza is an overwhelming powerhouse force.
Yeah.
Devontae is a bigger guy, but has explosiveness that can move through you. Cruz is kind of the same thing that Devontae brings in that respect, where very explosive, hard to hold down. He does tend to fade a little bit later, but we've seen less from him doing that recently. Varela and Rodriguez, hard to hold down on the smaller side of this bracket, but absolutely guys that will sub their way out of a problem late versus anyone in the world. Jimenez, a guy that can get your back from anywhere and has great finishing. Bodoni, 88 champion, extremely hard to beat, looked amazing on Aiga. Like all these guys, and Porfirio like has a whole host of tricks that got him to the dance in the first place. All these guys have tools that in the right scenario, in the right style matchup, in the right rule set, and the right day can win this tournament. And it's really interesting because usually in tournaments like this, you can kind of pick, oh yeah, it should be, this is how it's going to line up. There are pathways for victory for every single one of these guys with how this is bracketed. Yeah. And that's super neat. Yeah. Because that is not common. I do think it's Bodoni's to lose, but seeing him lose wouldn't surprise me. This is one of those weird tournaments where not a single one of these 8 guys wins it. I'm like surprised. I can see a pathway for all of them getting through who they need to get through to win the title.
Yeah, because you never know who's having a bad day or who has a fucked up shoulder and doesn't admit to it, or
who makes one little mistake. And like the Bodoni versus Cruz match, like makes a mistake and then gives the matchup, or in golden score sits down or gets taken down or sits out wrong. Like you never know how it's going to play. And golden score makes that weird like little X factor. You can't sub a guy. Suddenly you're back on the feet trying to wrestle. Guys make little mistakes in jiu-jitsu because it's not wrestling. I think Jacob Rodriguez is probably a guy that will make the least mistakes in the wrestling there, which is interesting. So again, it's a fun tournament.
We'll see what happens.
I'm amped for it, Miranda. You're going off to that's all we got for this week on the preview side of the show. Miranda, you're going off to World Masters here in a couple of days. 2 days?
Wednesday. I leave Wednesday night.
It's Monday night right now.
I think I'm gonna go sometime Friday. They haven't put the brackets out yet. Allegedly, I'm ranked number 2.
Nice. At
so
middleweight.
I'm happy about that. So, we'll see what happens there.
ADCC Trials has filled up for the adults.
And
not trials, sorry, Open.
Chicago.
Chicago has filled up. Yeah. My bad, that's what I meant.
Not Trials. Trials is not.
Yeah, no, Trials is not filled up yet. But if Chicago's filling up that fast, your bet that Trials is going to fill up quick.
That means I should probably. Yeah, but they said there'd be like 257 spots for each weight class.
Hey, having seen the Opens, those are 1,300 people, like kids, adults, masters, all that stuff. Like, I need to register. I'm saying it now.
But I can wait to register for Trials if I feel like that.
If you want to do Trials, and anyone listening to the show.
As a man, because women, we have all the space in the world. They're not going to be 100.
If you want to do Trials as a man, as an adult, like you want to do ADCC Trials.
If you're a 77 or a 66.
Yes. Register now because you will, they will fill up.
Yeah.
Like if it's not, and you're going to be SOL, come like, we want to compete a month out. Like there will be no spots. You will not be able to register because they will have to have capped those divisions until we go to 3 days for trials. Yeah. Which I think this will be the last ADCC that will only be a 2 day trials. I think after this, they will go to 3 days. I think it will be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or you will have to have qualified with points. Like the system, I think in the US will change in some way. Either it will go to 3 days or it will go to qualifying points where you have to go and like even participate in opens leading to trials.
Kind of like what Black Belt Worlds does.
Yeah.
That you have to have so many points to actually get into.
To prevent people that potentially have no business going in, where it's like, hey, you're a local blue belt that struggles at local blue belt competitions. You probably don't have any business going to trials.
But it's your thing.
It is your thing. And if you register early, go for it. But if like there are enough really, really good guys now where it's like you have to have shown up in other tournaments to be able to get those spots, I think is where we're going. Could be wrong. I honestly kind of hope I'm not wrong because watching the level explode has been great to see. But I say it now. If you want to do trials, you want to do ADCC trials, register now, because if you are an adult man, your divisions will fill up before trials happens.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to register the last week because the spots will be filled.
And the Open too, probably. So you should probably register for the Open.
Yeah. Right. Like I've said it for years. If you want to go to a tournament, register for the tournament. Deal with not going or doing it later if you want, but don't not register because I find as a coach, it motivates people and it motivates gyms to train and push and bring everyone. A rising tide carries all ships. Bring everyone up to go and compete and move the sport forward in kind of the competitive landscape that I really love and I think you really love too.
Yeah, it's fun.
So it's great.
It's good times.
Yep, that's all I got. Maria,
So,
anything
yeah.
else?
No, I went to a Kyotera seminar. That was fun.
Nice. You've been to a bunch of
What
his.
else? Yeah, I've been to a bunch of his. I'm trying to think what else. I might have a super fight at the week after Master Worlds.
Jesus. Good for you, Miranda.
I don't know.
I'm looking to get matches and I can't find.
I'm still waiting on that one.
I can't find a age weight.
It's like an in-house kind of thing.
I can
find.
ask.
Do you want an exhibition match in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'll do it. I can't find age weight belt in 3 hours or next 3 months. So looking forward to it.
Start traveling.
I know.
Do what I do. Just start getting around.
I got nothing else, Miranda.
Nope, that's it.
All right. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine.
Miranda.
And we are the Grappling Rewind. We stay on the mat, whatever it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.